So this video is going to be geared toward the 1Ls, whereas my first two videos were really made for the prospective students who are looking into law school. Since exams are coming up in a month, I figured why not just share some of my exam tips and just give a few pointers for the 1Ls going into their first set of exams. I know that when I went into my first set of exams, it was very nervous just because I had never taken exams before. I was very unfamiliar with what it was going to be like, but there were a few things that I felt worked for me, and just a few general tips I felt like it'd be smart to share. Just so you have a plan of attack going in. Number one thing that really helped me was taking practice exams. Now, there are a few things related to that. Number one is most people are going to outline before they take their exams. They're going to work on an outline throughout the semester and have that done. But it's important that you do it relatively early. So if you haven't started outlining, I would definitely get to that now, because in the study period before your exams, you don't want to be working on your outline. You want to be taking practice exams on a regular basis. So if you're going to be doing outlining, and not everybody will, some people will just rely on other students' past outlines, but you want time to do practice exams. Now, why are practice exams so important? It simulates the real situation of what it is an exam like. You'll see how your professor specifically structures their exams, and ideally, maybe you'll get to see some model answers, and you'll see your professor's thought process, which is very important. What I did is I took practice exams in a group, sort of my study group. What we would do is we would all write out our answers and then sort of read them off to each other, and we would discuss them. And we would take all the best things from everybody's answer and sort of put them together. And then by the end of the study period for any particular exam, all of our answers started sort of sounding the same. And that's a good thing. We were all helping each other out and taking all the best pieces, putting it all together, and then you would never miss those. You'd see in a lot of exams trends. If you look at a number of practice exams over a number of years, you start picking up on the things that the professor always seems to work into the fact patterns. And that's what you want. You want to make it so a lot of the things that you see when you sit down on test day are almost expected. And you say, oh, I've seen that a few times before. The only way you're going to get that is by taking practice exams. So next is just a general idea of when you're taking exams, what makes them a little bit difficult is that it's not like an undergraduate exam. I mentioned this in one of my other videos, but it's about application, not regurgitation. So learning the law itself and understanding the doctrines and the concepts and the exceptions, that's only one step. The more important step for exams is taking those concepts and those doctrines and applying it to a new situation, almost like the law itself is just a tool. And when they give you the exam, it's almost like here's a project that you have to work on. You have to use these tools to make something new out of it. So you really need to practice applying the concepts throughout the course of the semester. You can do this by picking up some of the supplements, the examples and explanations books. They have a lot of practice hypotheticals at the end of each chapter. You can make up your own hypotheticals. Just make up a factual situation and see how the doctrines that you learned would apply to it. And it doesn't matter if there's a clear-cut right answer. It's not about coming to a right answer. It's about having something to discuss and being able to flesh it out one way or the other. You could always take these to your professor, talk about it in your study groups. Just take some time to apply it, because they don't teach you how to take the exams in the class. And if you go to class every day and you're a superstar in reciting back the facts, it's not going to help you on the exams. So it's counterintuitive in that what you do on a daily basis is not exactly what's going to help you. It's just one step in the process. Just always keep that in mind, that it's about application and not just spitting back out the law. That's just pieces of it. You want to know what kind of exam are you going into. Is this going to be an exam that has no word limit, or is this one that has a very strict word limit? It's very important to know, because you're going to approach it very differently. A speed exam with no word limit, you're just going to be mashing the keys as fast as you can. Usually professors don't take off for things that aren't completely pertinent to the analysis. They're just looking for the right words and the right phrases and the right issues, and they're just going to be checking them off as they get them. And anything that's not really applicable, they'll just skip over. Now, of course, if you say something that's blatantly wrong, then they'll mark X for it. But these long, no word limit exams, you just want to be pounding the keys as fast as you can. So there, you're just going to be thinking of a checklist in your mind, and you're going to write up a checklist, likely as part of your outline, of the things you want to go through. Now compare that to a word limit exam in which every word has to be precise and you're not working really too fast. It's much more cerebral. You're sitting there and you're sort of thinking about it a lot, and a lot of the time is going to be spent editing your answer and cutting out pieces because you'll want to type out an answer and then have to cut it back as you try to work it towards some kind of word limit. And there, the space is at a premium. You can't just write whatever words come to your mind. Every word has to be precise. So know in advance what kind of exam your professor is going to be giving because you prepare for it differently. Where something like my torts exam was a no word limit exam, I wanted to learn as much as I could and just essentially throw paint on the wall. Now, that's not necessarily the best approach, but I knew that I would get all the concepts in there, and to me that was a little bit easier. The word limit exams people find a little more difficult because every word has to be precise. There's no room to just insert fluff into your exam answer. So again, be very familiar with the exam format that your professor is going to require, and this just ties back in toward practice exams of knowing what to expect when you go into the classroom on the day of your exam. Probably the most important point I can give with regard to exam analysis and what kind of things do you talk about during the exam is that there is no right answer. And that's important to remember. You're not looking for things on the exam in which you could say, oh, here, I know this, boom, here it is, down on the page. No. What you're looking for is an area in which you say, oh, this is ambiguous. I don't know which way this would go. And that's gold. That means that you spotted an issue that the professor, hopefully, wrote into the facts. He wrote it in or she wrote it in a specific way as to make it ambiguous so that you would see it sort of a fork in the road and that you would say, well, I don't know which way it would go. You want to take advantage of that. That's not a bad thing. That's the best thing you could find on the exams because it allows you to analyze, down one side of the fork, down the other side of the fork, and you could flesh out both sides of the arguments and show maybe what are the parties going to argue, what kinds of facts will be important, what will they focus on. The answer you come to is not really that important. That's the most important thing to remember, is that there is no right answer. And second of all, even if there really was, one way that seems much more logical than the other, that's not the key point. The key point is the analysis that gets you there. And of course, you come to some conclusion at the end just to move you forward. You would say, well, because it seems like it leans more toward this way of the analysis, we'll go down that route. But at least you've analyzed what would happen if you went down the other side of the fork. So make sure that you don't come to any... Don't be too conclusory. Don't make assumptions, because then you're precluding yourself from fleshing out analysis. If you too easily come to conclusions, you too easily concede things, then you're giving up chances to say, well, it might be this way or it might be that way. So some of the worst exam answers I see are the ones that make conclusory statements too quickly. Make sure that it's absolutely certain before you make some kind of conclusory statement or assumption that just skips over a piece of analysis and just allows you to move forward. You're looking for whatever ambiguity you can find. Also, some of the best exam answers that I've ever seen, and this is from speaking with professors and having them set me up with good examples of exam answers, they're the ones that not only know where are the ambiguities and where should they analyze things, but the people who do the best are the ones who also know when you don't need to analyze something. Now, I know this sounds like it's in conflict with what I just said about not being conclusory and not making assumptions, but there are certain situations that are not open to interpretation, and for you to say, oh, it's ambiguous, would really just be you reading in the ambiguity into the facts, and it's not really there. Now, my professor said, if you can find the areas in which it's not ambiguous, and you could say it here, it's not ambiguous for this reason, then that's points right there, because you're saving time. First of all, you're not wasting time analyzing something that's really pretty, clean cut as to which way it's supposed to be. And at the same time, you're showing a skill that you've learned, that you can pick out where the ambiguity is and where it isn't. Okay, so remember, there's two sides to that coin, finding ambiguity and also finding what the really concrete statements are, the things that you don't need to analyze. It'll save you time, and your professor will likely be impressed by that. Again, it's about finding a balance. Don't be too conclusory, but at the same time, don't analyze things that really don't require analysis. Also, make sure you take sufficient time to outline at the beginning of your exam. don't just go right into it because it's going to be very long. It's going to be very dense with facts. You want to make sure you take, I would take usually at least, my exams would be about 3.5 hours long, on average. I would always take at least half an hour, to flesh out everything and break it down in an outline format, because it's too tough to keep track of everything in your mind, and the way you want to organize it, it's just so detailed and so long that you can't just keep it in your head. And there's so many forks and areas in which you say it's ambiguous, it'll go too many ways. I would draw sort of a tree of arrows on a page and show all the things I wanted to analyze, which way I thought the things were going to go. Just however you want to outline. There's no set way of doing it at the beginning of an exam, but just make sure you take the time to sufficiently outline your answer and get a clear picture of where you're going with your analysis. Very important. People also ask me, are there any resources or supplements that you can look to help with your exam performance? I'll make a thread specifically about supplements and books that you can read along the course of the semester to help you out. But there's a book that I found called Getting to Maybe that I found very helpful for exams, and it's specifically about how to take a law school exam. And they introduce the concept of, these forks and how do you analyze the different sides of the forks when you see them. It's a pretty long book relative to the amount of information it really contains. It all just boils down to this idea of appreciating and embracing the ambiguity in the facts and in the law, and utilizing that to your advantage as you take the test. But if you want to get something to reinforce this concept or just sort of lay it out there for you, given that Thanksgiving break is coming up, it can never hurt to maybe page through the first few chapters of Getting to Maybe. It was a helpful book. That's just some generalized tips with regard to exams, and if I think of anything else, I'll certainly make another video about it. If you have any questions about anything that I discussed here about exams, feel free to message me or just leave comments. And don't be scared, don't be nervous. As long as you go in there prepared, you have such a leg up on your classmates. The majority of them are not going to have taken enough practice exams. They won't have outlined early enough. They won't understand this concept of looking and appreciating and embracing ambiguity. They're going to want to approach it like an undergraduate exam. So just by knowing these few things, you're going to have a leg up on your classmates. So be confident, and don't worry too much. Don't get yourself scared. You'll get through it. Everyone does. And so good luck with the studying, and I'll see you guys soon.